couple $1,000s in terms of materials and work. So again, I'd just like to support what some of the others have said. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? Calling for a second time, any members of the public that wish to speak? Calling for a third and final time? All right, thank you to all of our speakers. That closes the end of our public input section, and we'll now move on with the agenda to E1. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is the 2022 Commonwealth Games. There is a request before Council to consider Greater Victoria as an alternate host for the 2022 Games.
Councillor Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am going to move that Mayor Atwell, on behalf of the municipality of Saanich, be authorized to sign the letter to the President of the Commonwealth Games Federation supporting the proposal to have Greater Victoria as the alternate host for the 2022 Commonwealth Games.
Second.
Discussion, Councillor Bryce.
Yes, I think that this is one of those things that is highly unlikely to ever come to fruition. But in the history of the Commonwealth Games, the Commonwealth Games family, there's always been cities that stand ready in case something goes sideways. Now, the proposal that has been put in by Durban, South Africa, will likely go ahead. When we hosted the games here, there were cities that said that they would act as our backup. And this proposal, actually instigated by David Black, who was so instrumental in the 1994 Commonwealth Games, has received overwhelming support from the other communities in Greater Victoria. And since Saanich was the absolute hub of the Commonwealth Games when it was hosted here, I think that we should definitely lend our support to this. So I'm hoping that that Council will see fit to endorse the motion.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for that excellent background. Councillor Plant, you still have your hand up?
No, thank you.
All right, Councillor Brownhoff and then Durban.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, Commonwealth Games of '94 it was just an excellent experience for this whole region. Took a lot of planning. The only thing I'm wondering is, I agree this is a backup and the likelihood of it happening is probably very remote. But I'm wondering if we should have a drop-dead date. And in other words, you know, we've got 6.5 years. If they decide they can't do it and we only get 3 years to plan it, will we be able to do it? I'm just wondering if that's something that should be in the letter as well. Some sort of, we are willing to be there, we're willing to be the backup, but the latest that we'd be able to orchestrate and plan this thing, if we had to do it, would be, you know, whatever year that would be. With the games in '94, we planned way ahead of time, money was put aside, there's a whole infrastructure about transportation and stuff. I just wouldn't want to get shocked 3 years in that we have to do it. And I'm just wondering, maybe to you, Mr. Mayor, if you could speak to Mr. Black and see if there's something that we should put in the letter about the latest possible date that we'd be able to orchestrate it in the region. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for that question, Councillor Brownhoff. I did meet with David Black at his residence to talk about this. It was a topic that came up as a result of a previous meeting. I think my only concern with the idea, and I think it's a good idea, is that it will put us out of step with the other municipalities that haven't put this limitation in. So if we do that, we're saying that we'd like to be in this large group, but with this proviso. And given that it's just an alternate and there has been very little planning done, I think there's some safety in just supporting what the other municipalities have done. I think we'll all be in the same boat. Certainly, I don't think we want to pull out based on a time limit if we sort of exceed that and if we want to have to address that again when the other municipalities might be okay with going ahead. Surely it's going to be a collaborative effort that we're going to have to meet again in the future and decide. So that would be my suggestion, is to not add that now, to just sort of lend our support to this through just a letter. Councillor Brownhoff.
Perhaps what I would recommend then is, you know, maybe a conversation, because I'm sure other municipalities will be in the same predicament. A lot of the venues are in Saanich, and I'm sure it's not going to happen. But I just, I know how long the games took to plan and how much money and transportation and transit. I just wouldn't want to be given a short date to do it within, although I'm very supportive of it.
All right. Thank you. My speaker, this is Councillor Derman, and then Councillor Haynes is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm certainly supportive of this initiative. I participated to a great deal of the Commonwealth Games in 1994. There were an incredible number of benefits that accrued, I think, to the community from exposure in much of the world to certainly the tourism industry, but for infrastructure that still remains with us today in many cases. And beyond that, I think a tremendous amount of the community pulling together and a great deal of sense of accomplishment, of spirit, of community building came out of it. And all those are really positive things. That has left us with a legacy of infrastructure, which would have to be upgraded in some cases, but is still there. But also a legacy of people with the background and experience who are still, in most cases, with us, who have gone through that and have a lot of expertise to offer. So these are all very positive things. I understand Councillor Brownell's concern. I would expect the organizing committee of the Games would have some proviso to say, to Durban or elsewhere, we need to know by such and such a time, because we're not going to send the Games somewhere else 8 months before. Or whatever it happens to be. So it's worth investigating, but I think there must be something within the organizing committee that establishes a process that would allow a substitute venue to have a sufficient time to properly plan. I'm happy to support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haynes?
I'd be very pleased to support this. A couple of observations. I understand what Councillor Brownell is saying, but I do believe these organisations have these tripwires in them that timelines are important, and they would know when reasonable timelines are being approached. And I certainly think it's important that we're in step with the other municipalities. As a new observation, I would say that this is an offer to be a backup plan. And given the process that we're going through now, I wonder if it's appropriate and worthwhile to explore our collective mayor's opinion on offering to host a further Commonwealth Games after this one, should we not be the alternate. The value of being the alternate actually raises our profile, raises our name, both as a tourist destination, so there is an economic plus there, just being listed as one of the destinations, so that is hugely worthwhile. It's free promotion for our area, but it may also start to start our thinking process about perhaps it is appropriate to look at being a direct host for a future event. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Councillor Workman?
Thank you, Mayor.
Battery?
Thank you, Councillor Derman. Going back to the concern that Councillor Brownell had, and I think it's sort of taken care of in the last paragraph. If we were to host the games, subject to an agreement on allocation of costs relating to security and facility upgrades, and I believe that would cover it. For me, it does cover it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion? I'm also going to vote in favor of this. I'm just taking a look to see what the next games are. The next games are in 2018 Gold Coast. Durban, which is here in the agenda here, is 2022, 2026, and 2030 haven't had competitions yet and haven't been decided. So if there's no more discussion, I'll call the question on this item. All in favor? All opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Let's move to item E2.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, this item is 2017 55 Plus BC Games Regional Bid. The report of the Director of Parks and Recreation is recommending that Council provide a letter of support for a regional bid to include in this submission, and also to approve in principle, subject to the success of the regional bid, funding contributions and an equitable share of in-kind contribution.
Councillor Bryce?
On a roll here, we'll try it again. I move the recommendation.
Second.
All right, discussion. Councillor Bryce, thank you.
To me, it's quite remarkable, actually, that Greater Victoria has not hosted the BC Seniors Games up till now. As a community, we did host in 1988, the BC Summer Games, collectively as a community, and we did a fabulous job, and it really stimulated that volunteerism in the community, which ultimately then we could tap into in 1994 for the Commonwealth Games. So these things are so interlinked. From what I have been able to observe with the Seniors Games, they do generate a good economic return for the community as well. So not only do I think in British Columbia it is our time and turn to step up and to host these games, but I think from our own community's point of view, it would be a very positive undertaking.
Thank you, Councillor Plant, and then, sorry, Dermot was next, and then Plant, and then Murdoch.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm happy to support this. It is, as Councillor Bryce has pointed out, an event that tends to provide economic stimulus and benefit to the community. But beyond that, Victoria area, CRD if you would, is such a natural to host these kinds of events because we have already a great deal of the necessary infrastructure and organization in place and have seen additions such as Piskies and the new facility up at UVic, and in addition to existing facilities, and all sorts of organizations that provide the expertise and the volunteer help that's necessary. So I think this is just a natural fit. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dermot. Councillor Plant?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this entirely. My grandmother participated in several of these, and I'm very happy to hear that she's passed away, unfortunately, on New Year's Eve. But nonetheless, I have fond memories of her coming back from her participation in the Seniors Games, bragging about her cribbage exploits. So it doesn't require a great physical prowess always to participate in the BC Seniors Games, and I think for us to participate as part of a contingent, this would be a wonderful opportunity, and I really hope we get it.
Thank you, Councillor Plant. Councillor Murdoch, and then Workland, and then Haynes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too will be supportive. I think the funding request seems like a very reasonable amount for what we would be getting in return. I wanted to offer my congratulations, my thanks to the authors of the report who did a very good job of making sure that possible venues reflected all of the contributing communities, because I saw, and I'm sure you all did the same thing, Saanich facilities and parks are well represented in the list of possible venues. So that was certainly one of the things I was looking for, in addition to the obvious benefits that are brought by a number of folks traveling from all over the province to attend the games. So I'll be supportive.
Thank you. Councillor Workland.
Thank you very much, Mayor. 2017, it gives many of us on council 3 years to prepare and to participate in it. I look forward to it. But I do strongly support what we do have before us. And a question I would ask, and maybe it's just assumed, we're looking for applications for 2017, 18, and 19, and we're applying for the 2017. Does that mean if we don't get the 2017, we'll be on the list for 18 or 19?
Over to staff, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Wordland. My belief is that you put a request in for a specific year, and that's what you're considered on. But we can certainly get the validation of that, but that's my understanding of how it works. Because I know City of Kelowna has said that they're going for the 2019 games, so they've identified a specific date.
Is there anything gained by going for all three? And I mean, that decide which ones.
I can certainly chat with the folks that are putting the bid together and see if that's an option. We can contact the BC Senior Games Society and clarify that.
Okay. Just a question for myself and Director of Parks. Do you know if golf is included in that?
Yes, it is.
So that could be a big boon to our own facility.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that. Councillor Woodland? Any other questions? Done? All right, thank you. All right. Councillor Haynes and then Brownhoff.
I'll certainly speak in favour of this, and not to repeat what my colleagues have already said, although I do like the idea of exploring whether we could put a bid in for all three, picking the one that is not necessarily taken by others, because if we bid, we want to win, and increase our chances for that. It is clear that this part of the world is being recognised as a centre of excellence for a whole range of sports, from rugby right through to, well, I won't list them because we'll be here a long time, but I think this is a great initiative to get behind, and it also adds to our economic development, and putting our name forward for this type of a bid puts us in the running to get our name recognised as a centre of excellence to host these events. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haynes. Next up is Councillor Brownoff and then Councillor Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'm very supportive of this, and I want my colleagues to recognize the name change. Having dealt with seniors for many, many years with the Age-Friendly Communities Reference Group across Canada, you'll know that it used to be the BC Seniors Games, and now it's the 55-plus BC Games. And I can tell you that seniors don't like to be called seniors. My father is one, my mother. I asked my dad years ago when I was working on Age Friendly, I said, what do you think it should be? And he said, well, I'd rather be called 55 plus. I said, you're way over 55, but it's what they feel in their heart and soul. So I think it's great they've changed the name, and I'm definitely supportive of this. Thank you.
Sure, they'll be grateful that you shared that.
Yeah.
And Councillor Sanders.
I'm just going to add my voice that I'm very supportive of this, and I'm pleased Councillor Brown, I've added that, but I'm sure they're excited at 65 when they get away, which they don't get at 55. So I think this is excellent. I've never seen the review of what's offered at the 55-plus games, and you know, my mother said you can't go to a pool hall. If I'd learned to play snooker, then I could have maybe participated in the 55-plus games. So that's just my comment. Thank you.
It's your mom's fault.
Yes, my mom's fault. I couldn't go to a pool hall or bowling. Didn't see why.
All right, so I'll also speak in favor. This is something that came to my office a few months ago, and just a quick discussion just made me aware of the great downstream benefits that we might receive from this, and of course boost tourism and many of the things that these games provide, or any of the games provide when they come to Sandwich. Certainly we have a plethora of facilities in great shape, and things that you can do here that we enjoy, others can enjoy simply by coming and visit through these games. So I'm very happy to support that. So with that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried unanimously. Thank you so much. All right, Madam Clerk, next item, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This next item is Canada 150 Community Infrastructure Program, and the report of the Director of Parks and Recreation is recommending the Council approve an application to the Canada 150 Infrastructure Program for the rehabilitation of the Burt Richmond building, which is adjacent to the Gordon Head Rec Centre, and funding will be shared with the 2016 and 2017 budget years for the matching funds.